ladies and gentlemen, we've had the Brazilian Grand Prix, and it's that time where I go through and rate each and every one of the drivers and who's had a 10 out of 10 weekend and who's had an absolute stinker. The good, the bad and the ugly of every driver of the whole weekend. And let's see how they got on. As ever, we always start with the race winner. And let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Would be much appreciated. Who have you got for the 10s and the 1s this weekend? And please like, subscribe, comment. Much appreciated. But like I said, we always start with the race winner, Lando Norris. A perfect weekend, much like Max Verstappen in the last sprint weekend. He dominated every single session. Sprint qualifying pole, sprint win, qualifying pole position for the main race, and a 10-second victory up at the front. Never in doubt, some would say, but when he pitted for that second time and he came out behind Oscar Piastri and Max Verstappen, I think he was just hoping that they would pit up ahead of him, and pit indeed they did, and it rounded off a perfect weekend, made up what was just 1 point ahead of Oscar Piastri heading into the weekend, and he couldn't have got any better. Now a 24-point lead in the championship, one hand on the trophy. There is still 3 races to go, 1 sprint race as well on top of that, so 4 in total, 3 venues. And it's his to lose now. Will the mentality change? Let's see. But it couldn't have gone any better. It was an absolutely brilliant job from Lando Norris. Managed the tricky conditions in the sprint race. He actually is the one that went through the massive puddle where Oscar Piastri then, went over his splash. As did Franco Colapinto and Nico Hülkenberg, but Lando Norris lucky enough first to arrive at the scene and managed to keep hold of the car and brought home a brilliant P1 while his teammate crashed out. And his weekend started brilliantly, and then a win where his teammate Oscar Piastri finished in 5th, so another massive haul of points to stretch his lead and just get that comfort gap. Because even with a DNF now, he's only just 1 point behind. So as much as we normally would say he wouldn't risk too much, he still can potentially risk, making moves if he needs to. He's got a bit of a buffer now, and it's the perfect scenario to be in. And we've seen how Max Verstappen handled himself when he had that buffer. He's going to make his car as wide and as ugly as possible, and the guy chasing him down can't afford to lose any points. But we've not seen that from Lando Norris so far, but the last few weekends have really been championship level drives. And now he's just got to complete the job that he's sort of really set himself up for the next 3 races. But a fantastic weekend for him in Brazil. I've given him a 10 out of 10. Second place man, Kimi Antonelli, and he's had another fantastic weekend. Qualified and finished in second in both of the sprint race and in the main race, hunted down by faster drivers behind him in both races. I thought he drove, in particular in the race, because he was on the compromise strategy when he started on the softs, everybody else around him on the mediums, which meant he had to just sort of drag that out on the weaker tyre, and then was on the mediums for which probably was the best tyre at the end. And to hold off Max Verstappen, who was absolutely flying on a brand new set of softs, and he was in his DRS zone with 4 laps to go, and I would normally have thought he'd be a sitting duck, but Kimi Antonelli defended like a real promising rookie. Toto Wolff saying, is this the coming of age race for Kimi Antonelli? This is now back-to-back weekends where he's beaten George Russell, back-to-back races all within 1 weekend in the sprint and the race where he's beaten George Russell. He just had the measure of him all weekend, and he's done a brilliant job in every sort of asset. Qualifying, performed brilliantly well to get it up into second place. And then, I mean, the only small mistake really he's had of the weekend, and he was really lucky, was on that safety car restart where he was caught a little bit napping. Got the tap from Oscar Piastri, but really lucky for him that Charles Leclerc was there, because if not, he would have gone for a spin, and it wouldn't have been such a great race for him after all. But lucky for him, Leclerc was there. He tapped him, which put his car straight and meant he lived to fight another day. And obviously the penalty for Oscar Piastri on that, I think he was probably lucky in some ways on the penalty, because when I looked at back plenty of times, Oscar couldn't disappear. He's gone for the move, and really Kimi Antonelli probably should have left him a bit more space, but I mean, he doesn't make the rules, and it's not his job to make them decisions or enforce them. That is the job of the stewards, and he just does what he can do. But it was a fantastic weekend for Kimi Antonelli. I've given him a 10 out of 10. Third place man for the race, Max Verstappen, from the pit to the podium. What a race weekend for him. It's been crazy. His sprint race was a poor one, really. Qualifying P6, in the race P4. They went for a setup change, thinking that they'll improve things for qualifying, and that went the worst we've seen. He qualified the first time in 4 years just on pure pace alone. He was out in Q1, P16, elected for the pit lane start, no surprise there, and a new power unit and a complete change of the setup. And boy, did they get that right. And it's such a shame actually that they didn't get the setup right earlier in the weekend, because the way he was flying and that car was flying, had he had that car for the sprint from sort of day dot heading into Brazil, he would have been the man to beat. And had he started further up the grid, he would have been the man to beat with that setup, with that car, because he was absolutely flying. The only downside, and I don't know if it's just, they'll obviously discuss that internally in him with the team, but should he have pitted when he was in the lead, he had 7 laps older tyres than Lando Norris, and could he have made it to the end, and should he have tried and fought to the end? Because what is the worst that would have happened? Would he have just ended up behind Kimi Antonelli like he did? I think they just, because they were so punchy and aggressive, and they had to be from the outset, and that mindset is hard to shift. We've said that before, where people should have probably gone a different way and they didn't, especially sort of mid-race when you're battling and you're fighting and you're just full on 100% aggression. It's hard to then switch quickly to a defensive mode and say, somehow he was in first place, which is incredible as in itself from pit lane to be leading, but did that decision to pit there potentially cost him a race win, if not second place in the end? With just 7 lap older tyres, we've seen it possible. Look what Liam Lawson did, holding back his teammate, and about 5 or 6 cars in the DRS train for a good chunk of time, to come home in 7th place. So when you've seen another team do that, another driver do that, Nico Hülkenberg also did that. He was on very old softs at the end and managed to keep his position. Should Max Verstappen have stayed out? And I think I will always think that he should have tried that strategy. The team should have tried that strategy, and I think they were, I wouldn't say they were conservative in going for the softs at the end, because it was a brand new set of softs and you thought he'll hunt him down and he'll pass him, and he was absolutely flying. 17 fastest laps of the race did Max Verstappen towards the end, so he was flying. It was a bit ballsy, a bit aggressive. It's going to hunt him down and pass him on track. But when you've got track position, and we've talked about that an awful lot this season, and that's why qualifying has been such a big deal. Should they have made the call to stay out? We'll never know. The strategy was compromised anyway, because he had to pit very, very early in his first stop because he got a puncture. And was it that sort of, because of that sort of offset, made it difficult to, or put that doubt in their mind where he might have stayed out a little bit longer on the mediums, or would have been a few more laps fresher mediums had he not had that puncture. He started on the hards, got rid of them pretty quickly. They weren't the right tyre to be on, probably the right call to go on medium. But then there's always that doubt going to remain there. Should he have put on them brand new set of softs, or should he just tried hold off Lando Norris with the masterful defensive driver that we know Max Verstappen can be? But it's hard to judge, but I've given him a 10 out of 10 still for the race. I know some people sort of said 9, but the drive was just absolutely brilliant. Pit to P3. We've seen people do it like sort of further down the back of the grid, but coming from the pit lane, when you get out the pitch, you're so far back of the last guy. You still got to make up that time. He had a puncture as well timed obviously because of the VIC, but still, and all the compromises and difficulties with that race, to pull off a P3 was absolutely tremendous. So a 10 out of 10 is well deserved in my opinion. Fourth place man George Russell, started in 6th, finished in 4th in the end sprint. Qualified in 4th onto the podium with a P3 in the sprint race. Didn't quite have the pace of Kimi Antonelli this weekend, and he's been off the usual pace that we've seen with George Russell, and that's normally just been ahead of Kimi Antonelli. And it's just not had that this weekend. But overall, a pretty solid and decent weekend, some good results. I think the difference here is just that he's been beaten by Kimi Antonelli, and I think that's the surprise. But still, a podium and a P4 in this Mercedes, which hasn't been mega really, but decent in the end. I've given him an 8 out of 10. Fifth place man Oscar Piastri, and well, it's been an absolutely disaster of a weekend from him. Qualified in 4th place, finished in 5th in the end. Got into P2 with that dive on Kimi Antonelli on the safety car restart. I just can't see how that was ever a 10-second penalty. It never was. But despite that, he was never had the pace. Even when he was in P2, he wasn't really ever closing on Lando Norris, and it just looked like that Norris had the measure of him. But to finish second behind him in both of the sprint, or even a third in the sprint, and a third in the main race, he would have gone away with a lesser job to do in the final 3 races. But as it is, a huge crash, which was really a little bit of a mistake. Unlucky obviously with the water, but other drivers made it through, he didn't. A big crash, and it's that's 7 or 8 points gone there to Lando Norris, and a P5 in the end. Again, why did he pit? He was on the mediums, he was out ahead of his teammate Lando Norris, but the team called him in for the pits. Should he have fought and held on to try and beat Lando Norris from there? I'm really surprised at that call, or for Oscar Piastri to just go ahead and say, yeah, I'll jump in. It's effectively just the team have just managed him out of the way there with the strategy option. It's just really, really difficult. Another weekend without a podium. And when will he turn it around? There's only 3 to go, and they've got to be 3 mega races. Anything can happen, but it'd be really disappointing. And how can he pick himself up from here if he loses the championship, which he's led for so long? 16 fantastic races, but from there on, 5 absolute stinkers. And he's way down. He's picked up just 54 points. George Russell's picked up nearly double the amounts of points he has in the last 5 races, and it's just clearly not good enough. And his teammate has gone on for a strong run of form, with 2 wins and podiums at the absolute worst, in a pretty solid car. Just not sure what's gone on with Oscar and this car, where it's not had any upgrades, but suddenly just can't seem to make it work, or unable to drive it like he wanted to. I can't explain it, he can't explain it, but hopefully he gets the answers soon. But I've given him a 3 out of 10 for this weekend. 6th place man Ollie Berman with another fantastic weekend. He was really strong. That has car, when it came to the qualifying, pulled off a brilliant P8, which set up the race for him. In the race, he pulled off a nice move on Liam Lawson in P6, and then the same again on Isaac Hadjar. Got himself up into P5 at one point, which was absolutely brilliant, to finish 6th in the end. Another excellent race weekend, and the sprint wasn't so great, but the car really wasn't there. With he qualified in 15th, finished 12th in that, but the car just came alive. They set up changes that they made from the sprint to the qualifying, absolutely made that car work, and they were brilliant from there on. And Ollie Berman with another fantastic points scoring position after Mexico. A lot of talk now of him being the man to replace most likely Lewis Hamilton when he retires from that Ferrari seat, and even potentially if Lewis doesn't do well next season, for him to jump and take that seat. He is a Ferrari driver within their rookie banner, but I think he's way too early for that at the moment, but he's heading in the right direction, and this is another fantastic weekend for him. I've given him a 9 out of 10. 7th place man Liam Lawson started there, finished there in the end. A really fantastic job to just get this strategy to work. 52 laps on the medium tyres, and he held off his teammates' charge on the very last lap, or heading into the very last lap into turn 1. They touched wheels, but even they both sort of said that was just sort of fair game. Hadjar sort of saying it was a bit of a late dash, so no sort of real fallout from that. But Lawson can be absolutely megally happy with that. I mean, the DRS train that he held back on mega old tyres, we've seen everybody else where they were struggling on tyres and there was a tyre deficit. You were just a sitting duck going down into turn 1, but Liam clearly had the traction coming out of that final corner, was able to defend brilliantly well into turn 1, and brings home a fantastic result for him and the team. The sprint wasn't so good for him. Qualifying was really poor in 17th, but the race in the sprint race he finished in 13th, so not particularly great, but he more than made up with that for the team in the qualifying, and the result, a double points finish for him and the team overall. And for Liam Lawson, I've given him an 8 out of 10. 8th place man Isaac Hadjar, he started in 5th, finished just behind his teammate in the end, was P7 after the first stops, and then pitted on lap 19. He came out P15, and that is where he really struggled because he didn't quite maximize the use of the tyres at that stage, but he'll be disappointed because he's been beaten by Ollie Berman and his teammate in the end. The mid part of the race just really cost him when he was stuck in traffic, and the DRS trains kind of made that late move, like I said, on Lawson. Didn't pull that off, but yeah, he was happy with the battling but disappointed with his race overall in the end, and you can understand that, where he's finished 3 places down from where he started. I don't think he probably would have expected to finish in 5th, but he would have expected to at least beat his teammate and his teammate and Ollie Berman. Didn't quite happen for him, but again, like I said, a good double points finish for him and the team. I've given him a 7 out of 10. 9th place man Nico Hulkenberg started in 10th, finished in 9th in the end. He had a very good start to the race. He was up to P7 very early on with a nice move on Fernando Alonso, and then up to P6 with a move on Alex Albon. Like Liam Lawson, went very long and did the I think it's just 2 drivers that did the one stop, him and Liam Lawson, and he went a mega long distance on the soft tyres, 35 laps to make it on the softs in the end. The DRS train clearly helped him. I think that just helped him keep positions with the really old tyres. But a very good race and very good points for him. Sprint again was a really good qualifying, but he got caught out with that lap 6, like Oscar Piastri and Franco Colapinto, but managed to keep his car going. Didn't finish last in the end, finished 15th, so just a couple of places from last place in the sprint. So a decent weekend, a very, very good point in the race, and a brilliant to pull off the strategy that he did. I've given him an 8 out of 10. 10th place man, Pierre Gasly, and he's had a fantastic weekend. That Alpine car really likes it around this circuit. They did last year where they were falling off, but this year was really out of the blue, wasn't it? Because this car's been an absolute stinker. It started well in the sprint. The qualifying wasn't particularly great in P13, but for the race he pulled off a fantastic sprint race to pick up a single point for P8 in the race, and another brilliant job to finish P8 in the end. Was, you know, just held off the final 0.2 seconds ahead of Alex Albon on the line. So yeah, really good double points finish in both the sprint and the main race, and it's just good to see him finally fighting up in the points positions. I don't expect it to last. I think this is just probably a one-off, the way the cars just worked around this circuit. They have clearly just said that we've really just written this car off very early on, focused on 26. And let's hope that, you know, they're back up fighting right at the front next season. And Pierre Gasly showing when he's got a car, he can pull off really good results. And 2 double point finishes for me in this dog of a car deserves a 10 out of 10 for me. 11th place man, Alex Albon, started in 12th, finished 11th in the end. So close to stealing that point of Pierre Gasly, like I said, just off the last line. But I think Pierre deserved it overall compared to the Williams. Williams just wasn't there this weekend. It just wasn't good run around here. They had a difficult sprint race also, and they'll just hope for better next time out in Vegas. So let's see how they get on there. But yeah, the car just wasn't quite there. Even in the sprint, they qualified in 12th. They finished last, did Alex Albon, in that race. So a difficult weekend, but I'm giving him a 6 out of 10. 12th place man, Esteban Ocon, and it's his qualifying performances that have really hurt him this weekend. He had a poor qualifying in the sprint, P19, and a poor qualifying for the main race. It was P19, started from the pit lane for the race. He finished 12th in the end, so from pit to P12, you say that's actually a pretty solid result. But it should have been more. That car was good around here. He'll be disappointed when you look at what his teammates done, and he just needs to get his, you know, qualifying right to just give himself a chance to fight for some points. Even in the sprint, he qualified 19th, finished 11th in the end, so he made up 8 places, so making up a good chunk of places with good racing. But he just needs to qualify better to just make life easy for him. I've given him a 6 out of 10. 13th place man, Carlos Sainz, and much like his teammate, it's been a horrible weekend for him. It started off horribly in the sprint qualifying where it was a disaster. P20 really wasn't happy with his team there. Finished in 14th in the sprint race. For the main race, like, started 15th. Finished 13th in the DRS train a lot. Had some minor damage turn 1, lap 1 when he got tapped with that tap with Lewis Hamilton. I think it was probably a little bit more Lewis's fault a little bit, because Carlos Sainz just couldn't disappear where he was. But because it's lap 1, turn 1, them incidents sort of just get blown over a little bit. But it's been a difficult weekend for Carlos Sainz. Not where he wanted to be, but he'll lick his wounds and come back next weekend stronger, I'm sure. It's 5 out of 10 for me. 14th place finisher Fernando Alonso for the race, and he's had 2 very mixed days. His sprint qualifying was really good to qualify in P5, and a P6 finish with a good couple of points for him and the team, but it looked like they went the wrong direction after the sprint race, or they sort of just stuck with it, but everyone else sort of made gains in and around them, and they dropped back. Qualified 11th, finished 14th in the race. He went on the hard tyres, which clearly was the wrong tyre, but they just sort of that start and tyre sort of dictated a race a little bit too much, in my opinion. They just stuck with the hards, and then didn't even go for the right strategy calls in the end. Should have just pitted and binned that tyre very early, much like Max Verstappen did, and he might have had a better chance of finishing slightly higher up. I don't think that car was right there for the main race. But Fernando Alonso does what he can do, and it was a brilliant sprint points finish for him. And he just does the job when he can. It's a 7 out of 10 for me, a very solid job from Fernando Alonso. 15th place man, Franco Colapinto, when he started the weekend with some fantastic news. He's got that seat in the Alpine outfit from 2026 onwards. The sprint, a difficult one, qualified in 16th place. He had that DNF when he followed Oscar Piastri into the wall. In the main race to finish 15th in the end. He was stuck in the end of the DRS train. Had he qualified better, I think he would have been on for some decent points. He'll be disappointed because for a change the car was actually good around this circuit, and he's got a good contingency of fans that turn up from Argentina to Brazil to follow him and show some support. But yeah, disappointing weekend for him. In the end, I've given him a 4 out of 10. 16th place man, Lance Stroll, hit by Yuki Tsunoda lap 1, and that spun him around and put him towards the back of the field. Finished 1 place ahead of Yuki Tsunoda in the end. Yeah, I'm not really sure what else to say about Lance Stroll. The sprint race wasn't much better at all. The car was good, and he qualified in 18th and finished the sprint race in 14th. He's just been poor again and just hammered by Fernando Alonso again. A 3 out of 10 for me. 17th place man, Yuki Tsunoda, started there, finished there in the end. It's been another horrible weekend. Yeah, the racing was just crap, wasn't it, really? There's no two ways about it. He got that 10-second penalty for hitting Lance Stroll in lap 1, which was clearly his fault. And you just know it's poor when your teammate is ahead of you by lap 2, and not just 1 place ahead of you, a couple of places ahead of you, and he started in the pit lane. I mean, that is just so damning. It's unbelievable. He got the 10-second penalty for the Lance Stroll incident, but obviously it wasn't his fault. The team touched the car when he came in. He didn't serve that penalty correctly, got another penalty for around that. Qualifying for the sprint race wasn't good either, qualified in 18th. The car wasn't great. It was better in sprint though, because, Max Verstappen managed to put that in P6, so it wasn't quite as bad as qualifying in P18. Finished sprint in 14th. Needs to turn things around pretty quickly. He's got 3 race sort of shootout to potentially keep this seat in this car for next season, and he needs to turn it around quick. But a 2 out of 10 for me for him. On to the DNFs, and the first of them, Gabi Bortoleto, lap 1, went off and spun and hit the wall. It was all his mistake really there. It's been an absolutely disastrous homecoming for him. It couldn't have gone any worse. It just got from bad to worse. To crash, all his fault in the sprint race. Glad to see he got away safely from there, because it was a pretty horror smash going. They're so fast going into that turn 1, and he just left his DRS open, braked and turned. And I'm not sure what he could have expected there. Late move and a bad crash there. That meant he had to obviously didn't qualify for the main race. Started at the back, and to put it in the wall on lap 1. Just 2 crashes in 2 days. It couldn't go any worse for him. I've given him a 1 out of 10. And then on lap 7, it was Charles Leclerc, through no fault of his own. Really disappointing for him, to be honest, because he pulled off an absolute mega lap to get that car in P3 for the race. And then the incident where Oscar tapped Antonelli, and he used Charles Leclerc as a little bit of a bumper to keep him straight. Lost his front tyre, and that was a DNF for him. Just rounded off a horrible weekend for him and Ferrari. The sprint was not much better. Qualified in 8th, finished in 5th in the sprint, but difficult. I think it's hard to judge when you've only done 7 laps in a race, but going off his sprint race, he finished 3 places up where he qualified, and that qualifying lap to get that car in P3, it did not deserve to be there. But Charles Leclerc, with another magical lap around Brazil, he's pulled them off a few times, so I've given him a 7 out of 10. And then the final DNF, his teammate Lewis Hamilton on lap 40, and again, I think it's just been a horrible weekend for Lewis, probably one of his worst. Tapped by Carlos Sainz in lap 1, and then the mistake from him with his incident with Franco Colapinto, which he got a penalty for, which completely broke his rear wing. He felt that it was harsh, that decision, but when he's just misjudged it and gone into the back of Franco Colapinto, there's no way you can really put the blame on Franco. Yes, did he move while defending? Possibly, but as an experienced driver in the 7 World Championships to your name, I think he kind of just expects a little bit more better from Lewis Hamilton. He sort of looked like they just hung it out to serve that penalty when it finally came, and then boxed to retire on lap 40. The sprint was equally as horrible, wasn't it? He just qualified in 13th, finished in 7th in the end, picked up a couple of points, but that was probably about as good as it got, and he's called his time at Ferrari a bit of a nightmare. And since then, it's even had the chairman of Ferrari, John Alcon, sort of calling out both the drivers, sort of say it's about time they stop talking and put some action in on the racetrack. But I think it's a bit rich saying that. I don't think they've talked an awful lot. They've sort of been very respectful of how crap a car they've got, and they've not done anything really well this season. And that comment just seems so out of sorts. I need to see the full sort of interview and where that's come from, so to get the context of that, but it just doesn't look good from him. And Charles Leclerc has actually performed very, very well in a pretty crap car, so not much to look forward to on that. On to the predictions review, and it's been an absolute stinker. I've not got anything right. I had Oscar Piastri to take the win and the pole positions in every format, and it was his teammate Lando Norris. I didn't get any of the predictions right in any of them. Even in the good, I thought it'd be a good weekend for Williams, but it absolutely wasn't, both finishing way out of the points. And I thought it'd be a bad weekend for the Alpine, and it's a double points finish in the sprint for Pierre Gasly and in the main race, so going home with 2 points, which is more than they ever would have thought, and more than I ever thought. So predictions have been absolutely in the bin, and maybe it's about time I start to pick Lando Norris for some of these, and maybe you might get some disastrous races. Who knows? But yes, what a Brazilian Grand Prix we have just had. We head to Las Vegas next up. Watch out for the preview coming on that, but let me know your thoughts on the driver ratings, and let me know who you've got for the championship. Do you think it's now one hand on the trophy for Lando Norris, or has Oscar got a sniff, and can Max Verstappen do something yet? 4 races to go at 3 venues. Let's see how it pans out. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment. As always, see you on the next one.